All right, and we are live in 3, 2, 1. Diary of a Fan. Nope. No, we're not live. We're starting that over because not going to do that. Diary of a Trans Woman is brought to you by everyone over at patreon.com. Patreon.com/Diary of a Trans Woman is the best place to go because it is the place where you can go to support this show. If you want to hear more from me, if you want to see this show do more awesome, crazy, cool stuff, head on over there and consider pledging a little bit of money every week or so. Every show, even every dollar helps. So consider donating over at patreon.com/Diary of a Trans Woman. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is episode 55 of Diary of a Trans Woman. It is a surprisingly warm January 11th, 2017. I know it's January. Last time I said July. Apparently, a lot of you made sure to make sure I knew that. So yeah, it's January 2017. Year's been going pretty good so far. Got a few things to talk about. We are going to be talking about a little bit about just kind of my whole feelings towards the whole transgender movement and the queer movement and the gay agenda, and just kind of how my thoughts have been evolving over the past few months. And then we're going to be talking a lot about, we have 3 news stories that we're going to talk about today. We're going to be talking about politics. We're going to be talking about religious freedom. And we're also going to be talking about some good news, a veto, a promised veto. So without any further ado, let's stop talking about the show and let's just go ahead and jump right in and do the damn show. I don't want to be angry. Okay, all right. Well, first off, if you are watching live, if you're watching on YouTube or something like that, you may have noticed that this does not look like any of the other shows we've done because I have a new studio. When I moved into the place that I'm at now, I was originally going to move into the basement, which is this very unfinished cinder block wall and no ceiling, just straight up wood struts and everything visible. Vents and all that crap. Looks very, very grungy, very, very warehousey. I don't know. It looks like a basement. Looks like I was going to move into that room, but in order to make room for someone else coming in and them having 2 dogs, I stayed up in a smaller room upstairs. Recently, as of in the past week, that person has vacated the premises. They got their own house and they moved out, and I came down and I took over this basement like a mofo. So yeah, I have a very much larger space to work in, and I absolutely love it. So still working on stuff like camera angles and lighting and all that stuff, but I'm eager to see kind of what I'm going to be able to do with this space. I imagine the acoustics are not going to be the same. I'm pretty sure I probably sound a little bit different, but hopefully it's something we can work with. There's probably some awesome soundproofing and actual studio building things that I can do in this space, and I'm really looking forward to it. So stick with me and keep watching, and you'll slowly see this space evolve into something that I hope looks like a decent podcaster studio, but we'll see. So yeah, I spent a lot of time this week thinking about what the hell I'm going to talk about on this show. Excuse me, my voice is gone. Thinking a lot about what I was going to talk about on the show, because normally when I come onto the show, I talk about something trans related or queer related that's happened to me during the past week. And looking back, there hasn't really been that much going on. And I remember talking to my girlfriend about this, and she had said, like, "Oh, that's a good thing, isn't it?" And I realized, no, it's not necessarily a good thing. There have been a lot of good things that I've talked about on this show that have come to pass because of my being trans and my being queer and that kind of stuff. So, but I can't really think of much of anything that has really happened. So I'm going to talk about a little bit more mundane stuff. We're going to dive into some, like, just kind of what my thoughts are. But first, I wanted to talk about, if anybody remembers, some of the longtime folks who have been listening to this show since early last year, remember that this show was nominated for a podcast award in the 2016 Podcast Awards. And if you weren't with the show at that point, to sum it all up, the Podcast Awards hosted nominations. You paid a small fee, you entered your name into the list, and you had 2 weeks to have people vote for your show. And just kind of like put their back, like to say, yes, you have other people come on and say, yes, I agree that this person should be nominated for an award. And you get a few people to do that. And you have your show looked at by the judges, and you have the people nominating you thrown into consideration, and that determines whether or not you are able to get onto the Podcast Awards. Now, I did this no problem. It was a no-brainer. I have friends that have won the Podcast Awards multiple times, and it has kind of been something I've always dreamed of doing someday, but I never imagined I would ever get the chance to. So just being able to take part in this was a big deal for me. So I wound up being nominated, and there is a group of podcasters podcasters and fans of podcasts that I am involved with. Actually, two networks that are very tightly knit: the Frog Pants Network and the Diamond Club Network. And now the Diamond Club Network got together, and they have a very strong presence at these awards, to the point where they have won so much that they have made them Hall of Fame podcasts, whatever that means, and it kind of bars them from winning, but their name is always on the list as the kind of rulers of their category. So what the Diamond Club did is they got together, completely separate from the Podcast Awards, and said, hey, we've got a lot of podcasters here in this community, and we have a lot of podcasters in our fan base. So if you have a podcast that you want to enter into this, put your name on the list, and we're going to have our own little voting period over the next few days just to see what one is the most popular in our group. And so in the LGBT category, there were a big fat goose egg of podcasts other than Diary of a Trans Woman. And that kind of made it by default that the podcast that the group agreed to put their backing behind for the LGBT category would be the show. And it was very after the whole thing was said and done, Diary of a Trans Woman won by a landslide, and there was a lot of controversy afterwards, after the guy who runs the Podcast Awards found out about what we were doing, but he couldn't. We stayed within the rules, and he wasn't happy about it, but he stuck by his ruling because we didn't break the rules. One of the things that he did that I found very unsavory was he was trying to raise money to continue to do the Podcast Awards by making a new site and harking on everyone to donate money to continue to fund the new website, which would make the continuing awards ceremonies possible. And in doing this, he had required that winners, if they want a trophy, because the Podcast Award trophy is a very iconic trophy that is very pretty, and I very much like it, but you had to buy that if you won. And I wasn't about to do that, unfortunately. I want one of those trophies really bad. It would be amazing to have it, but I didn't do it. So we won. And it was very much in part by the fans of this show supporting it. And it was very much in part made possible by the backing of this amazing podcast community made up of Diamond Club members and Frog Pants Network. So I did something last week that I've been wanting to do for a while. I did not buy a trophy from the Podcast Awards. I decided to go and get something a little bit more permanent. And the Frog Pants Network, their logo is not necessarily something that is... It's a little goofy. It's a little cartoony, and I like it. But I went and got on my upper arm, on the bicep, on the underside of my bicep, the Diamond Club logo. And if you are watching on video, you can see on there it is a greater than and less than sign lined up against each other to form the shape of a diamond. And it's got black outline and it's purple on the inside, and I love it. So I got a tattoo of the Diamond Club on my arm. I permanently marked myself because of this. And so that was a really big thing. And it's simple enough, it's cryptic enough to where it's not screaming out what it is. I like if I get a tattoo, I want it to be a little bit cryptic, a little bit special to me, and not necessarily apparent as to its meaning to the rest of the world that sees it. Like I have a molecule design on my right hip, and a lot of people don't know what it is, and a lot of people assume it's serotonin or dopamine or something like that, but it's actually estrogen. And so I like that it's got a little bit of a cryptic nature to it. I would love to get Diary of a Trans Woman tattooed on me, but I feel like that would just be a little bit too, I don't know, a little bit too much, I think. Maybe someday we'll find out, but definitely this tattoo symbolizes the Diamond Club and the amazing friendships that I've formed through the Diamond Club Network and the Frog Pants Network, and the just the connections I've made, the people I've met, the inspirations I've had there. And it represents the people here who listen to this show, who have found me completely separate from either of those entities. I definitely hold you in the symbolism that this tattoo has. So thank you. I finally got my trophy for that award, and I absolutely love it. And it is all because of everyone out there in these communities and the people listening to this show. So thank you so much for that. Moving on to different news. I've had a lot on my mind lately. I've been thinking a lot, and I don't know if it's just a side effect of looking up transgender and queer related news every week and just perusing sites to find good stories, but I am getting sick and tired, guys. I am really getting bogged down by the treatment of transgender individuals in this country. And I don't want to name names. I'm not going to name names, but I had a conversation with somebody about the idea of reverse racism earlier this week, and it really got me to thinking. I am of the opinion, I have the stance that reverse racism is not a thing. It may still be considered a hate crime. It may still be heinous. It may be a criminal act, but I don't believe that reverse racism is a thing. And I got into a very constructive, I feel as though it was a good debate, and I love discussing these things with people. It's not very often that you can have a intelligent discussion with people who have two very opposing viewpoints and be able to talk about these things and have it remain civil. And so anytime I'm able to do that, I'm incredibly grateful to the people I'm talking to, because I find that to be such an enjoyable experience. But anyways, we were talking, and I wound up phrasing my arguments as talking about how anger is an acceptable response to oppression based on privilege and power, and talking about how the idea of racism is something that is brought upon purely by a stance of privilege and power. And one of the arguing points I threw out there that really kind of poured gasoline on the thought processes I was having separate from this occasion was that you have a lot of groups like, let's say, take for instance, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, while I do not believe is a peace group, I believe that they are fighting for their rights in a very drastic and extreme way. So you take that, and and I was talking to my roommate as well right before the show about this. Imagine trans people doing this. I sit around and I watch politicians stand up in front of crowds and propose bills and pass bills into law that bar trans people from having a safe place to take a shit. I have stories popping up all the time about trans women who were killed simply because they were trans. Um, People who are physically abused, incredibly often verbally abused or sexually abused, forced out of their job or their apartments or their schools, denied treatment at hospitals. And I don't see any basis for this. There is no basis for this. There has not been some giant act. There hasn't been something that has happened in our history that is supposed to cause all this. Like take Germany and Japan after World War II. I've been watching a lot of Man in the High Castle, so World War II is on my mind a lot too. Germany and Japan after World War II, not a lot of people trusted them. Like they were looked at differently, and it's because that they were on the losing side of a war. Whether or not that's justified or not, you can argue that, but they were definitely looked at differently because of something that had happened in the past. There is not anything in the past for transgender or queer people that would warrant such a response, such a drastic response from people today against us. And so we are being prosecuted by people all around us, whether or not it's your coworkers, your landlord, or your doctor, or your politician, your state representative, your president. We are being fought against every single day for no reason. And it's really, really starting to get at me. And so I'm thinking, what if we responded in a way that wasn't just a peaceful way? I'm not suggesting that we should. I'm not saying that an appropriate response to this prosecution is to go and have all-out war between the trans and the cis. But what can you do? And it's a very helpless feeling, and it's a very hard thing to wrestle with. It's a hard thing to wrap your head around and accept and to live with every day. And I find myself going from this hopeless feeling and edging into this angry feeling. I am frustrated. I am angry. I am upset that we have to go through this all the time, and that the suicide rate is so high in this community, and the homelessness rate is so high in this community, and the unemployment rate is so high in this community, and we are still being fought as if we have done something wrong. And earlier this year, I went and go protest at the Republican National Convention in Cincinnati, Ohio, and that was a really interesting experience for me because I saw people who were so passionate about their beliefs, people who were standing up in front of cops, in front of so many armed men, and screaming about the injustices that were going on. And it was a very, very eye-opening and refreshing experience for me because you don't see that kind of passion every day. You don't see people standing up and trying to make their voices heard like that very often. And I wish there were more opportunities for us to do that. And you have Facebook posts, and you have YouTube videos and Twitter accounts and whatnot where you can voice your opinions. But to actually get up and demonstrate and to actually do something to fight for your cause, that's not something that happens often enough. And maybe it's just me needing to go and take part in more protests and more demonstrations like that. But right now, I feel very, very bogged down with this feeling of just, I want to do something. I want to fight for this. I want to fight to be treated like any other person out there. I want to fight so that my trans brothers and sisters do not have to be treated as outcasts, as evil, as godless creatures who have no respect for the traditions of old. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been dealing with all this past week, and it's been slowly building inside of me for a long time. But Anyways, that just about does it for kind of the diary portion. If you have thoughts as to what you're feeling, let me know. I would love to hear how you deal with these feelings, how you deal with the injustices that go on in our lives every day. So let's go ahead and jump into the news. Oh, wow. That diary portion took up a lot more time than I thought it was. We're going to have to make news really fast, especially because we have 3 stories here. First story, this comes from the Prince William's Times. I see, it looks, yeah, the Prince William's Times. Transgender journalist challenges Bob Marshall for 13th House seat. And this is from January 4th, 2017. We're going to start over here. Danica Roem is a Manassas native and former community journalist who spent nearly 10 years covering Prince William County government schools, transportation, and development issues for the Prince William Times before leaving the paper in 2015. She's also a transgender woman who began her transition from blank to Danica in 2013, but that was only part of the reason. Roem, 32, says that she entered the race to unseat the 13th District State Delegate Bob Marshall, a Republican who has held the seat for nearly 26 years. I wanted to go ahead and say that I thought that it was very refreshing that they put the statement that she is a transgender woman in the second paragraph and didn't start out with that being the headline of, or it is the headline, but the main point of the main first paragraph. But they didn't need to put the male name in there. Anyways, Marshall, 72, is known for his support for conservative positions on social issues. He is opposed to abortion rights and more recently promoted as yet unsuccessful bills to prevent Virginia localities and school divisions from outlawing discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. So I think it's safe to say that that's a big issue why Danica is joining and trying to take the seat. And that's a very good thing. What's very encouraging about this is I see a lot more in this article talking about her stances on a lot of other things, on transportation, on education, economic development, and minimum wage. All of these points have stances on her, and they don't talk about her and they don't have a bullet point for her trying to fight against gender discrimination, which I think is nice. It's obviously something that I hope that Danica fights for, but and I'm sure she will, but it's not the highlight of this article. It's not the highlight of her campaign, I don't think. And that's very, very refreshing, because anytime I get to look at someone else's viewpoint of a trans person and see that person acknowledge that there is more to that person's life simply than the simple fact that they are trans, that's a very refreshing thing, because there is so much more to someone's life than their gender identity. So anyways, I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Hopefully that would be very cool to have a transgender woman in the House of Representatives. Let's go on to a not very much a good thing. This is from Slate.com. Judge: doctors have religious freedom to refuse to treat trans patients and women who've had abortions. And this is, Slate.com. So, looks like in the waning hours of 2016, the U.S. Judge Reed O'Connor unleashed a bizarre ruling that fundamentally alters the balance between medical treatment and religious freedom in the United States. O'Connor's decision blocked a critical regulation enacted pursuant pursuant to the Affordable Care Act, which forbade doctors from discriminating against transgender patients or women who've previously had abortions. Most disturbingly, Dr. O'Connor found that such a non-discrimination rule violated the religious freedom of doctors and insurance companies that consider gender transition and abortion to be evil. The ruling marks an extreme extension of the dubious logic behind the Supreme Court's Burwell versus Hobby Lobby decision, and it indicates that conservative courts believe the purported right of healthcare professionals to discriminate patients trumps patients' right to sound medical treatment. So this is not good. So yeah, I guess doctors now have the right to refuse you treatment if you have done something that they don't think is good, which I think is frankly complete bullshit. If somebody comes in, I am seeing a doctor right now. I have started to see a new doctor. Great doctor. I can't wait to talk more about him. We have a thing coming up with him. But I have probably done some things in my life that he would not agree with or he would not do. That gives him no right to refuse me treatment. The fact that a doctor can say, okay, yeah, let's fix your broken arm. By the way, have you ever had an abortion? Or are you trans? If the answer to any of those is yes, I can't do anything. I don't think that a doctor doctor is a fuzzy thing, but I mean, this can extend. This has the very real potential to extend into practices by insurance companies saying that, if you've had an abortion, you cannot be covered by us. If you are trans, you cannot be covered by us because the X, Y, and Z. I think that is a very small step from this. But I don't believe that government should come in and say, you have to cover everyone. You have to treat everyone. But on the other hand, there's a sweet spot that needs to be in there. And obviously, I think trans people should be included in that, but I've got a little bit of a bias there. I think that doing it based on religious freedom. I think if you are going to refuse to treat someone based on their abortion history or based on the fact that they're trans, you never should have been a doctor in the first place. And so if you're going to refuse treatment simply based on one single fact, one single identity, or one single event that happened in a woman's life, I don't think that you should be a doctor. Yeah, you can refuse treatment to us, but I don't think you need to be practicing medicine. So that's my thoughts on that. Let's finish it up with the third news story here, and this is a good thing. I'm happy about this. This is from gayrva.com. Gayrva. I don't know. Update. Governor McAuliffe promises to veto proposed bathroom bill. Now, one of the things that I was talking about that really kind of got me going earlier this week was seeing politicians stand up, and I believe it's happening in 3 states right now. The HB2 law in North Carolina is not happening, but other states are now trying to do the same thing and adding different little facets onto it to try and see if they can sneak it under the transgender radar. Bills that propose that transgender students must identify themselves in certain settings and that kind of thing. But this is a good thing. So Governor McAuliffe has been clear that he will veto any bill that restricts the rights of Virginians based on sexual orientation or gender identity, said McAuliffe's communications director, Brian Coy. The governor has long touted Virginia as welcoming businesses and LGBT-friendly environment, as a welcoming business and LGBT-friendly environment for people to work and play. I think there's something wrong with that sentence. As we saw in North Carolina, these bills just don't hamper civil rights. They kill jobs. The governor is hopeful that Republicans in the General Assembly will drop these counterproductive bills and turn their focus towards building a stronger and more equal Virginia economy. McAuliffel's history of supporting LGBTQ issues is almost as long as Bob Marshall's history of opposing them. He protected state LGBTQ employees with his first executive order and has supported a statewide tourist campaign aimed at attracting sexual minority visitors to the Commonwealth. He also, for the first time last year, issued a proclamation supporting the Transgender Day of Remembrance. That's a cool thing. That's a good thing. Yeah, I definitely think that's a good thing. So I'm gonna be I'm probably enjoy going to Virginia if that's what's been going on there. So anybody out in Virginia who has any experience with how the government handles queer people in that area, or who has any experience with experiencing the government and how they treat their transgender or queer inhabitants, let me know. I would love to talk about that. But very, very promising to hear that this is happening. I do really hope that there are enough people who side with Governor McAuliffe on this. I hope they pop up in different states, and I hope that none of these bills come to pass. I hope these bills stop being proposed. I really hope these bills stop being proposed because they're pointless. I don't get what the point of it is. The gender divide in this country is not essential for life to continue. The gender divide in this country does not need to be around in order for this world to go on. It's just let people be themselves. Let people be who they want to be, and as long as they're not harming other people, that's fine. If a transgender person goes into a bathroom and sexually assaults somebody in there, yeah, screw them, throw them in prison and get rid of them for a very, very long time. But it just doesn't happen. So I'm getting really sick and tired of hearing these things. So that just about does it for the show, though. We are ending pretty much right on time. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, shoot them over to diaryofatranswoman@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. You can find the show on Twitter at TransDiaryShow, and I am at AbbyGeek on Twitter. I've been trying to be more active on there. You can find us on Facebook as well. Just search for Diary of a Trans Woman. We are on there as well. If you want to support the show, shooting a little 5-star review over on whatever device you're listening to. That's going to help get the show out there and then get it to more people who can benefit from it. And if you want to really support the show, patreon.com/Diary of a Trans Woman. Let's see where we're at right now. I actually don't know quite where we are at with Patreon. Go, internet, go, internet, go, internet. I need a new computer. Anyways, so yeah, patreon.com. So we are at 24 Patreons right now at $59 per show. That is amazing. I am incredibly grateful for that. So yeah, if you wanna learn more about supporting the show, head on over there. We've got incentives over there. We'd love to see you there. It's gonna do great things. Every dollar counts. So I think that just about does it. Music for the show was provided by Same Sex Mary. Their music is over at samesexmary.bandcamp.com. And artwork for the show was provided by Taylor Elaine Straw. If you would like to see more of her work, check out TaylorElainePhoto.com. Thank you so much to everybody out there listening to me right now. Be sure to take care and have fun. All right, and that's a show. So yeah, if you're listening to this or you're watching this on video, you're the only ones hearing this right now. Special bonus content. Hey, so I am looking at something right now. If I am hoping I can get a custom URL for YouTube. to make it a little bit easier to find these shows for people who wanna watch the shows, to see my ugly mug and to see this crazy basement workspace that I've got going on right here. In order to do that, though, we need a certain number of subscribers. So if you are watching this on YouTube right now, please go ahead and subscribe to the show. You can do whatever you want with that subscription. You can follow it religiously, or you can ignore it completely. Subscribing to the show is going to do awesome things, push me a little bit closer to getting a little bit more of a presence on YouTube and doing a lot more video stuff. So I got to work on some lighting stuff, and I got to maybe start looking at a new camera here. I'm not sure exactly how this video is coming through over the internet, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.